Hello, everybody. Here's a little blue train who's been famous around the world for 80 years. And of course, it's Thomas the Tank Engine. And you heard right. This year marks 80 years since the first book of Reverend Wilbert Awdry's Railway series was published. Now, I've shown my models of Thomas and some of his friends, my most recent acquisition being Daisy, the diesel rail car, in some of my videos this year. And today I thought I'd talk about what makes Thomas special to me. Now, Thomas, along with his two coaches, Annie and Clarabelle here, I've received as a train set for Christmas about 20 years ago, which would have been Thomas's 60th anniversary. And as the Thomas with Annie and Clarabelle train set. But my thing with Thomas and his friends began well before that. Like many, Thomas was one way of how I got my passion for trains. And he's the reason why my favorite color is blue, because Thomas here is blue. I've read many Thomas books before I knew of the Railway series, of course, and I've watched the show from the classic series to when they changed it to All Engines Go. And to put it delicately for those, All Engines Go is alright, but to me, it's just not the same as the original Thomas series. And as I'm sure many of you know, Mattel, the owners of the Thomas & Friends franchise, is creating a new Thomas & Friends television series that is scheduled to be released sometime next year. Now, I've watched the series from the classic series to All Engines Go. My favorite eras of the Thomas & Friends series are the classic series and the Andrew Brenner era. As it is with many of fans of Thomas. I've also watched several movies and specials. My favorite one, and don't get mad at me for hearing it, but my favorite one is Thomas and the Magic Railroad. And I've watched the show that introduced Thomas and his friends to America, Shining Time Station, which I like as much as the original Thomas and Friends show itself. I can't remember the first episode of Thomas that I've watched when I watched was. But of Shining Time Station, my most vivid memory I have of that was when my mom and I checked out a video from a library that I used to go to. That video being the episode Schemer Alone. Now, I won't spoil about what happened in that episode. You'll just have to check it out for yourself. But Thomas has always been a standout to me. I did like other shows, too, and there are some TV shows meant for younger audiences that I liked, too. But I often came back to those shows for a while, thanks to YouTube. But the interest would fade away again. But my interest in Thomas the Tank Engine has never faded from me. Even through all the changes that the show had gone through over the years, I still liked the show. And for those of you wondering if I became exposed to the original Railway series, from what I vividly remember was when I watched a YouTube video from Shunter Productions on the story Ghost Train, and I watched a YouTube video from New Controller 01 showing the story Toby's Tightrope, narrated by Willie Rushton. So what do I like about Thomas, you might ask? Well, Thomas to me is an inspiration. An inspiration for anyone into trains. Another thing I like about Thomas is how he and his friends are based on real engines, and has some real engines, like City of Truro, Stepney, and Flying Scotsman. He and his friends teach a lot of good lessons of life. A lot of good lessons for life, even for me, too. I've always liked Thomas ever since I was a kid, and even had Thomas toys that I played with, like Erdl, Wooden Railway, and as shown here, Bachman, ever since Christmas 20 years ago. And I even went to the Day Out with Thomas event twice, once at the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village, what year I can't remember, and once out at the Crossroads Village in Huckleberry Railroad in 2006. The year after I got this set, and the first year they held a Day Out with Thomas event. And I've even watched some other YouTubers who are into the Thomas and Friends community, like NWR 1991, Thomas 1, Edward 2, Henry 3, The Unlucky Tug, and many others. Be sure to check them out. But yes, Thomas is a popular franchise, and is an inspiration for anyone of any age. Even now, 80 years after the first Railway Series book was published, and 41 years since the television series aired on television, and 36 years since Shining Time Station aired here in America, Thomas is an inspiration for anyone who's into trains or not, and can make many more, like myself, and can make anyone, like myself, have a lifelong fascination with trains. Well, that's my story of what makes Thomas special to me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I will end it with me running my very first Bachman Thomas set around my layout.